I'm a stand-up comic, so there's always, bits or things that I do that are more for me than the audience. Do you have an equivalent to that as a chef? Like, is there, like, what's the most selfish item you've ever put on a menu?
It's funny. I think, I think like, well, we had it at Mara, and it'll come back because people loved it. But like, salt crusted fish, as an example, is like technique wise, is like a really hard dish to do.
Okay.
So it's like, let's do a salt baked bronzino.
That's a flex to show.
Yeah, and it's just like, and it's like
it's a skill set thing.
And you're like,
it's like tornado potatoes.
Yeah, and you're doing 200 covers. You're like, and so we just had it, but it was like definitely like, hey, this is good for me. And then at some point I was like, guys, we got to take this shit off the menu. Like,
it's killing us.
It's killing us. Like, what the whose idea was that? I'm like, whose idea was that? And everyone's sitting in the room like, don't tell him it's his, You idiots.
Y'all know it takes a special track to do this. I'm Mama P's and Q's, dripping sauce. It's just the fluid, it's the chef. I'm here to remind y'all I'm sick with it. My name is stuff that's hot, it's ubiquitous. Meaning it's one and the same, simple and plain. I'm all about my paper, the bacon, cheddar, and pain. I got these lanes running for the border. The talented Mr. Porter, keep it flowing like it's water. But here we go, there we go, creeping to a low speed. Is it him and his friend sitting in the nosebleeds? Play it cool, he ain't special just cause he's on TV. Everybody's hands up, acting like they know we. Welcome to another episode of the Taste Music Here Food Podcast Show. I am your host, Ed Porter. This is the destination for food, music, and culture and how they all connect. Today, we have an amazing guest. So this is one of those guys that makes you feel like you know him without knowing him. That's an endearing quality. And I'm an attempt to pay this gentleman the flowers he so gratefully deserves with this intro. So here we go. Tonight's guest is the maestro of Midwestern cuisine, a chef whose journey reads like a jazz composition, bold, improvisational, and masterfully orchestrated. From kitchens in New York City to the heartbeat of Minneapolis, he's composed a culinary legacy rooted in excellence, mentorship, and rhythm. As the founder of Soigné Hospitality Group and the visionary behind restaurants like Spoon and Stable, Demi, and Mara, he's turned his hometown into a stage of world-class dining. He's a James Beard Award winner, a Bocuse d'Or coach, and a quiet architect of culture who knows that great food, like great music, moves people. Welcome to the Taste Music Here Food Podcast Show, Mr. Gavin Kaysen.
Yo, listen, I want that. I want that intro for the rest of my life.
Listen, so it's
amazing.
It's out in the world now. So
yeah, that's incredible.
We can play
Great
that
job.
in intros. No, I always say that.
So articulate.
Yeah, thank you. I always say that I selfishly cherry pick all the guests that come through that threshold, and so anybody that I have on this podcast is someone that I truly have a reverence for and ultimate respect. And I believe that the ultimate respect to show a person is to specifically creative, because we're horrible self-promoters. That's why you have the PR companies you have, because you're just a doer, right? Yeah. And so that's my way of paying homage to. No, and I appreciate it. Yeah. So there's the food industry. The culinary industry is a small, I don't want to use the word fraternity because there's women involved. So club. Mm-hmm. It's a club that is, it's a universal language that industry people speak. And there's a certain type of person it takes to be able to do this on any level. And then there's the next levels, mm-hmm. which is where you're at. Let's talk about the origins of, and you've done plenty of interviews and podcasts about how you started and the subway from. Let's talk about what was the thing that hit you to where like, okay, this is going to be my voice to be able to display to the world.
There was two times in my life that came to me, specifically that I recall as you asked the question. And they both came to me at the right time, but very, very different where I was in my career. The first time I was in culinary school. So I was probably 20 years old. And I remember the chef instructor gave us a task. Go study X book, read this many chapters, come back to class tomorrow with this type of result. And I was not a great student in high school, certainly not in college either. And so I just sort of like brushed it off like I did all of my schoolwork and was like, I'll get it. I'll figure it out. Like that's kind of how I got through everything. I went to sleep that night and I woke up in like a cold sweat. And all I remember hearing was, if you don't take this seriously and go after it, you're throwing away your own gift. And I stayed up the rest of the night and I read the whole book cover to cover.
Wow.
And that was like my sort of moment of saying like, okay, if you really want to do this, if you really say you want to be a part of this, then do it, commit to it. But don't sit here and say you want to do it and then don't put in the work. The second time was when I was working in San Diego. I was the chef at a restaurant called El Bizcocho. And I was young. I was 25 years old. And I was on the patio of my apartment and I was reading Letters to a Young Chef by Danielle Boulud.
Great.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it and I turned to my wife and I said, I have to work for this guy. Like, I just want to understand, what is it like to work for the New York? Like, what's it like to be with the Yankees? You know, what's it like to be with the best team that's ever played, you know, and has the most championships. And there's a reason for that. There's a culture. There's a historical culture there that makes that team be who they are. And I wanted to know what that was like to be with Danielle. And I remember specifically that moment being like, I have to work for him. Yeah. So I wrote him a letter and went and worked for him.
Awesome. Yeah, Danielle. So
he's a whole nother level.
Yes, he's somewhere else. I remember walking into the restaurant and just felt it's like a cathedral feeling. Mm-hmm. It's very, very spiritual. Mm-hmm. It's weird. I know I sound like a geek, but
no. And like, you know, you walk into his. I was at his restaurant in New York a week and a half ago, and you know, the way the kitchen is built is, you go, like when I walk in, I go in through the back, but you go into the kitchen, you go up these very, very sharp staircase straight up, literally. And it's called the Skybox. It's his office. Mm-hmm. So it's him, his two assistants, or one assistant who's ever on staff at the time. And then they have a little table, kind of like this, but it's in a separate room. Right. You can seat 4 guests there, maybe squeeze in 6 if you're really lucky. And there's all these photos everywhere of Danielle with all these people, Andy Warhol, name the president, you know, whoever, mm-hmm. all these. But like, you sit there, man, and you're just like, what am I doing here? Yeah. It's crazy.
I like the flex, the subtle flex. You go to the back, so I
Don't go to the front. The front's locked. I can't even get in. I open the door. They're like, "No, get in the back." You know the code.
That's crazy. That's crazy. You know what? I'd like to start this off by playing a little game.
Okay.
Sort of like an icebreaker, even though there's no ice to be broken. So we're going to play a little game called This or That.
Okay.
And this is going to be the classic snack food edition. I thought this would be
I love it.
A great one.
Yeah.
So we're going to play This or That right now. All right.
Let's go.
All right. So very simple. Give you 2 options. Mm-hmm. You pick one.
Okay.
All right. So this is all stuff. We're in the same age bracket.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So Squeeze It or Ecto Cooler, but it has to be from the can though. That's when High C was High C.
Okay, so I would take Squeeze It.
Squeeze It. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any flavor in particular?
No.
Okay. Do you remember the Kool-Aid ones?
100%. Okay. Dude,
right,
this was
the original. This was the OG.
This is like the post-soccer game where you think you're doing yourself a favor.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
Destroying everything you just burned out of your mind.
Yeah, there's no juice in that, by the way.
No.
Not even a little. Actually, the artificial flavor logo on there is actually bigger than what it probably should.
Yeah, the chemicals so bad.
Yeah, it's
good for you.
Okay, next. McRib or McDLT? Do you remember the McDLT?
Yeah, McRib. 100%. I mean,
I still listen.
It's still good.
I know. We know it's not ribs. We know it's mostly soy, but it's still good.
I know.
It's still good. And
you have to think it's ahead of its time.
Okay, way ahead of its time. And I get it without onions though. I don't like. So for some reason, the onions on the McRib, like normally, you know, McDonald's they soak the onions in water, so it takes. But these onions are like
they're too sharp.
They're way too sharp.
Yeah.
They're way too sharp.
Yeah.
And the bread,
DLT,
I know it's
not.
like
That forever. You remember that thing?
Yes.
It didn't last very long.
No,
did it?
because it came out right before the styrofoam rejection.
Got it. Yeah.
And so that's why they killed it. It's just a quarter pounder with cheese.
You want to hear something? We did this competition. So Bocuse store, which we'll talk about, right? But we needed to come up with the flavor of tomato, the scent of tomato. We were like basically molecular gastronomy making the tomato.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy who I found in Wisconsin, a doctor, who created the scent of fat for the Burger King or McDonald's non-fat hamburger. So when you would go to bite it, you would smell like the grill and the fat marks, and you would trick your brain and be like, oh, it's juicy and it's fat, and it was nothing. So he created the smell of tomatoes for us.
That's sick.
Yeah, it was crazy. The guy was
sick.
Nuts. Anyways.
Okay, next. Big League Chew or Juice Box. Do you remember, this is the easy one, but do you remember the Juice Box gums?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, all right.
I mean, Big League.
But for sure.
I still have it.
I do too.
I mean, my kids have it. It's like,
so I introduced this to my 10-year-old daughter, and she's hooked.
But here's the problem with Big League Chew. There's no off button.
No.
When you start to chew. You know what I'm saying? Like the advantage of all the other gum coming in a wrapper is you realize I've opened up one. I have to eat that one. If I open up two, I'm a glutton for punishment.
Right.
Big League, you throw the whole thing in your mouth, and you're like.
And well, here's the also thing. So, and there's smart marketing. There's no Ziploc. There's no. Once you open this, you have to ingest the whole thing. And how much Big League Chew have you swallowed?
Oh, I mean, my God.
Yeah,
it's
all
so bad.
Absolutely. Okay, next.
I love it.
This one. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
Hostess fruit pies or pudding pies? There was a chocolate and a vanilla one.
Yeah,
this one has a 20 cent off coupon. By the way.
I never had the chocolate pudding pie, but I love the vanilla pudding pie. I didn't mind the fruit pies, but I will tell you the only one I liked was apple.
Apple was the only one that actually had fruit in it.
Yeah, I didn't like I didn't like any other ones. I would probably go with the vanilla pudding pie.
Vanilla pudding pie was kick ass, and it had like some kind of like frosting on the outside.
Yeah, it was I mean, whatever it was, royal frosting, effectively that would live through a gas station.
For sure. Yeah. Okay, next. Remember this? Are you a root beer guy?
Yeah.
Ramblin' root beer.
It was the root beer, 100%.
Yeah, I'm a root beer.
Yeah,
I'm a root beer guy.
Yeah.
But that Ramblin' root beer, I've been trying to find. So
they don't make it anymore, do they?
So it's the company. So this was a Coke product. The company was purchased by a Canadian company that still produces it, but in small quantities. And the biggest place that they distribute to is like some podunk town in like Kentucky. So I was trying to get some.
It makes the best root beer float.
It really does. It really does. And I'm sure there's 99,000 chemicals in it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's great. And Slice was good though. So Slice was good. So there was cherry, there was obviously lemon lime, which was then there's apple, and then orange.
Orange was good.
Orange Slice was the best orange soda.
Orange Slice was really good.
Yeah. I liken it to Orangina, which is
exactly.
So all right.
Slice.
That has been
love it.
Yeah, that's been this or that. All right. So let's go into the reason why also I thought it was imperative that I had to have you on is because so this whole entire thing exists because, in my humble opinion, food and music are two of the superpowers and two of the most readily accessible universal languages that we can have. I think the easiest way to immerse yourself in any culture is to experience the music and experience the food. And it's two of the easiest ways to really have an appreciation and affinity for a person, who they are, and their culture. Also, I believe that it's hard to have biases towards a person if you place and have reverence for the people that created such art.
Yep.
You've said that, and I 100% believe this and agree, that running a restaurant is like an organized symphony. And when I read that quote from you, I was like, okay, I've always thought that way. I've always been the weird kid that, I got into food to pay for studio time. And it didn't click to me that they were one and the same. And it took some mentors of mine that saw, talent in me when I didn't see it in myself. And Marcus being one of those guys. Like he gave me a shot. I clearly didn't belong. Like I shouldn't have been in the room. But he saw in me the fact of some skill sets and talent that I didn't see myself. How there's a difference between running a restaurant and running a restaurant group. And when you are on the level that you're on and you have so many, this responsibility for lives and how you take on that responsibility and you do it with such dignity and diligence is awe-inspiring. Can you talk to what the weight of that is and in how what does that organized confusion look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot there. I would say, you know, when when I was a line cook, and as most line cooks are, they're very focused on um, how to get to the next station, right? So if you're on garde manger, you're like, man, when do I get to fish? If you're on fish, you're like, when do I get to meat? Well, I always try to remind myself that when I was on that station of garde manger or fish or meats or whatever it was, the single most exciting thing every day was to do the same thing every day. And you knew that you just had to sort of get better at it. But the best part was is that you could always wear blinders.
Mhm.
You know, you could take them off and look at the station there and there if you wanted to, but you always had the excuse to be like, I'm just focusing on what I'm doing. When you become a sous chef, the blinders open up a little bit more. When you become the chef, they're off. When you become the owner of the restaurant group, there's no
Right.
such thing. And so, you know, I very much rely on the team. I very much rely on their capabilities. It is my responsibility to make sure that they're put in the right positions in order to achieve what it is. It doesn't mean that they're going to have challenge. It doesn't mean that they will not have challenges and hardships and frustrations and all of that. But a close friend of mine who I've been working with the last 11 months, his name's Preeti. He's in New York City. He's the CEO for the Kent Hospitality Group now. But he had this really great Danielle's group used to say something very similar to it, but this great way of approaching this type of leadership, which is when you're sort of stuck in that mosh pit and that mess of everything, you have a really hard time seeing how to get out of it. If you just take a view from the balcony and you look down, you realize like, oh, if you just took a left and went straight,
Right.
they're out.
You can see the maze from above.
Exactly. So I think sometimes that's part of the process when you're running a larger restaurant group or a smaller restaurant group is that if you want to chain and handcuff yourself to a stove because that's what you believe in and that's all you want to do and you just want to cook in that one restaurant that has 40 seats and that makes you happy, do it. Don't let the outside noise push you to open up 2 or 3 or 4 restaurants. Do that and be the best at that. If you have the energy and the desire to open up more like what I've done and what we've done, then do that.
Right.
You know, but it also means that when you create more of that, you're going to create more opportunities to figure out how to solve problems because there are going to be more problems that happen as a result. There's also going to be a larger risk. There's going to be a larger reward. There's all of that that's possible. But honestly, I lean a lot on my mentors with stuff like this. I mean, I talked to Danielle. I talked to Tom. I mean, Thomas Keller is a very, very dear friend and very dear mentor of mine. I mean, we spoke yesterday for an hour, and I mean, he's blowing up right now with all the Netflix stuff coming out. And I sent him a text. We've been playing phone tag for a week and he was finally in his car driving from one spot to another and called me and, we had an hour to connect. And, it's amazing when you take the time and you think about the amount of institutional knowledge that our mentors have that they can then pass down to us.
Right.
You need to, at those moments, I catch myself saying, just put everything down, like put your phone away, turn the computer off, sit in a chair, have this conversation, be present in the conversation because the knowledge being dropped right now is a valuable part of your growth.
Right.
And I mean, like there was something that he said yesterday that actually kept ringing in my ears today. He was talking about something, and he just simply said, even at my age, I'm still learning. And I just thought to myself, like, we all are,
Yeah.
but it's different to say it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's different to admit that.
I had the great fortune, and Marcus set this up for me too, to sit down for 2 hours with Patrick Clark.
Yeah.
At Tavern on the Green, and
Amazing.
in the height.
Yeah.
And again,
yeah,
kid from the Bronx had no idea this was a big deal. He had me waiting for an hour and a half though, but but I sat and talked to him, and he was the reason why I decided to go to CIA.
Amazing.
And so he basically said to me that if you truly want this, right, you have to commit to being a forever student. The minute you think you know it all, you're fucking dead.
Yeah.
Because this is one of those industries where it's ever evolving, and you hit on something, and now it all makes sense too. And I knew some of this, but hearing you say it again is different. A lot of your approach to how you do what you do is a lot like Thomas Keller and Daniel.
Mhm.
So they manage things from the inside out, meaning, you know, Thomas Keller opened up ad hoc for his
Mhm.
employees. That's just because Yountville is sleepy. So
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna have a restaurant for my staff to go to and eat at
Mhm.
because there's nowhere else to do. And one thing that struck me, and which where I knew like, okay, that he's the guy,
Mhm.
is during the pandemic. And I just moved back here, like at the height of, because I can pick, yeah, great timing. But anyway, the video that you posted, that was an urgent message to
Mhm.
the mayor and to the governor, like on behalf of, and you didn't have to do that. That was you did that. It wasn't just, that wasn't for you.
Yeah,
that
for
was
the sales tax.
exactly.
Mhm.
That was about the industry. Like,
Mhm.
dude, we're dying.
Mhm.
Okay, as an industry, and in order for to keep this going the way we know it to be, we need some help.
Mhm.
And so that to me spoke volumes about your character as a human.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, we get roped into being thought of as a monolithic people.
Mhm.
The industry is, and it's not that way at all. And
Yeah, and that was hard too, because I'd never really done anything like that. And I still, I mean, I don't, that's out of my comfort zone, to be quite honest. But I saw, especially at that time, like we needed to say, and when I posted that, um, the mayor called me within 35 seconds and was like, "What's going on?" And I talked to him and I said, this is what we need. Like, we just need you to default this payment for a month. We can all pay our employees this last paycheck that they're going to get. And we have no idea what's going to happen. I'm like, what's 1 month of default revenue for you guys
Right.
on this sales and use tax or whatever, whatever it was. And then it passed through and everybody sort of got a bit of grace there and leeway. And, the amount of messages that I received from people of gratitude, in this industry, in our profession locally, was really overwhelming. And it's also like, the difficulty when you stand up and say something like that is you get both the gratitude and then you get the hate.
right.
And I think sometimes we take the hate personally, but it's not personal. There's just sort of like maybe perhaps a lack of understanding of where everything's going and what's happening. And to be fair, none of us had any idea of what was happening.
Right.
It was just like, this might fix it for a week or two.
Right.
It might not.
Yeah, nobody
no-
knew what was
we had
going
no
on
idea.
day to day. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you were aware, but that what you did had ripples, not just here,
Mm.
like that. That caught fire.
Yeah.
Like, and it became the model of, at least, to let's put this Band-Aid on this bullet hole for now, but we need to talk about how we're going to go. Again, restaurants are cash-based businesses. No restaurant is set up to have, sitting on a year's worth of cash flow to be able to sustain without some significant revenue coming in. So
Yeah.
that had to be done.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it came from, for us, by us. And that's what made it so impactful,
Yeah.
honestly.
Thanks.
Let's talk about, the Soigné Hospitality Group. I believe, and from talking about your ideals and just seeing things and how things are done, there's a little bit of you in every one of the establishments.
Mm-hmm.
Same but different.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a skill set
Yeah.
to that. So let's talk to me about, the restaurants from,
Sure.
Mara
Spoon
and
and
Demi and
everything.
Spoon, and how it all, like.
Yeah, I mean, Spoon was the first one, so now that's a little over 10 years old. And originally that was gonna be
Congrats
called,
on that.
Thanks, brother.
That's
yeah,
major.
yeah, it's incredible. So originally we were going to be called Merchant, and I always wanted Spoon and Stable to be, and I believe what we are progressing towards that positioning. But I always wanted Spoon to kind of be the restaurant that helps elevate the way that we perceive and think about restaurants locally. Coming back home from New York City, there was always this energy around how great Minneapolis was, how great B market cities in general were. You didn't have to, like at that time when I opened Spoon, like you didn't have to only live in New York or Chicago or San Francisco or LA to be successful. Like you could take your knowledge and bring it home and find that success and translate it. But don't be an asshole about it.
Right.
Don't be pompous about it. Like,
Right.
Don't be arrogant, be respectful, be curious, but also teach people what's going on. I always wanted Spoon to be that. And I think it's done a really great job, especially seeing now the talent pool that has left Spoon and Stable in the last decade and opened up restaurants like Adam and Boucheron, Yia across the street, Diane down the street, and so on. And so, Joe and Lisa at Gia. I mean, all of these people who've kind of come out of the Soigné school, they deserve the credit that they deserve all the credit and all the awards that they've achieved. We were just simply sort of another stepping stone for them to get there, which was a huge stone for them to jump up and jump off of.
Newsflash.
Which is massive.
You're the Yankees.
Yeah. Right.
That's right. That's what it is.
It's like you got, and you have to be able to, you want to be able to show, and I wanted Spoon to be that. So I wanted to be able to show people like, you can do this, but let's show you a little bit of a formula that works for us and then take what will work for you.
Right.
Demi was always meant to be and has become this 20-seat restaurant focused on restoration. The word restaurant comes from the word restoration, to be restored. We as a culture are trained to think of restaurants as rateable experiences and not restorable experiences. So when we go out to eat, before we even go into the restaurant, we think to ourselves, what am I going to like about this place? What am I going to not like about this place? I looked at the menu online. I already know what I'm going to order. So you've already sort of like removed this entire experience that we're supposed to provide. So Demi is all about that. And, Mara is all about sort of this exploration of Mediterranean cuisine on the coast, from the French Riviera to the Italian coast.
Best hummus I've ever had.
Best hummus, right? It's so good. The pita's amazing.
Pita, I don't know what, and it's like a whole wheat.
It is.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Yeah.
Oh
So, we just sort of flipped the menu for spring, and, we just put a new burrata salad on today. It goes on today. There are dishes that I want that restaurant to really evoke. What is a beautiful restaurant that, yes, I understand it's inside of a hotel. I understand it's inside of the Four Seasons. I understand that that's in Minneapolis, but it's a busy restaurant that way. And it's been a lot of fun. And then Belcourt is, as I was explaining earlier, our French bistro and bakery.
Got you. Talk to me about KZ Provisions. And what exactly, you're accomplishing, what the goal was initially.
Yeah.
I mean, we know what you're accomplishing now, but
Sure.
We're going to speak to all of it about, what the initial goal was, working with Andrew and how it's evolved from what the thought process was to the monster that is.
Yeah. So Andrew and I have always been in business together. He's one of my partners in Soigné. And so he and I did a concession stand at Viking Stadium when it opened. We had two of them together. His name was attached to it. My recipes were attached to it with him. So anyways, I go to visit some friends who play for the Minnesota Wild. Jared Spurgeon, who's now the captain, who's a very dear friend of mine. And at the time, Jason Zucker, who doesn't play for the Wild anymore. He's in Buffalo. I went to visit him at practice. We're sitting around at a table like this, and they're eating like fish sticks. I'm like, what are you guys eating? And they're like, oh, it's fish sticks. It's Tuesday. I'm like, okay, what's Wednesday? Right? Oh, it's burritos. What's Thursday? I'm like, are you serious? They're like, yeah, they just cater in. They get it from 6 different places. Not to say they were bad, but in my mind, I'm like, you're professional athletes. This is hundreds of millions of dollars of payroll. If I'm the CEO of a company that's pushing out that much payroll, I want to make sure my athletes or my employees are eating the best that they can.
Yeah. Putting regular gasoline in a sports car.
Exactly. Well said. So I said to them, I said, what if I cooked for you guys? And they're like, yeah, they joked. And I said, no, seriously. So I went back, I wrote a business plan. I called Andrew and I said, hey, do you want to do this together? Here's my idea. I said, you know a lot about nutrition. You know a lot about the way the body ticks too. What do you think? He's like, I love it. 2 weeks later, I had a meeting with Chuck Fletcher, who was the GM at the time. And he says, look, this really hasn't been done in hockey before. Let's give it a shot. We signed a 3-year deal with them. Now we're on our third 3-year deal with the Wild. We just signed our deal with the Timberwolves and the Lynx. That's 5 years, which is our second renewal contract with them. And really what the whole intention of that business was and still is how do we take the intentionality of hospitality that's inside of restaurants and curate that for just the athletes that we're cooking for. So if I'm cooking for 20 plus hockey players or 15 plus basketball players, men and women, how do I make sure that they're getting the best that they can get? And then during the games, we cook for all the families. Yeah. Right. So all of the kids, the mothers, the cousins, the friends, etc. How do we make sure to celebrate the 5-year-old birthday of the little girl whose dad is out there on the court?
Right. Yeah.
Right. How do we do that? How do we make sure that that's a special moment for her to make sure that the dad or the mom who's on the court is like, KZ's taking care of my family in the back. I'm good. Sometimes we'll meet them at the airfield when they land at 2 a.m. to give them a warm thermos of broth, so that way I know they're hungry.
Right.
So it's about intentionality, and it's about focusing all of that on those athletes and making them the best that they can be. There are already incredible specimens, right? The reason they are who they are is because of, yes, the God-given talent that they have, but their mentality, their focus on their focus on perfection of their craft, right? They're always curious on how to get better. Food's never really been a part of that equation for athletes in a way that it can be now.
And it's crazy that wasn't thought of. Like, again, I liken it to racehorses, right? So anybody who's ever, I have some friends that were equestrian. So for whatever weird reason, I thought about this was brought up.
Yeah.
And so right before any competitions, the horse goes on a heavy, and all the training goes on heavy alfalfa sprout, like focusing, right?
Sure.
So any meals, alfalfa sprouts was because for the protein facts. And if you're not taking care of, again, your millions and millions of dollars of investment, and they're basically, these athletes were eating out of vending machines pretty much. And that's, to me, how that wasn't even a thought.
Well, you think about how we're raised.
Right, yeah.
I mean, listen, I have 3 boys. My 15-year-old plays baseball. My 13-year-old plays hockey. And then the little one's too little to do anything right now. But, it's like my 13-year-old gets out of a hockey game. He stops by a vending machine. He's like, Dad, can I get something? So you do that. You do it, right? They're 6 years old. You start doing it. You're like, yeah, go ahead, get some Ruffles and some Oreos. And, like, what the fuck are you eating?
Yeah, it's insane. Then you expect to perform at an optimal level. I always use the card thing because it changed the way I think about food in my relationship with food. And we know better, but yet we do all the, like, of course, chefs are the worst.
Yeah.
As far as the diet, like I'll smash I'll pour milk in a box of cocoa pebbles like it's nothing and just smash it because it's fast and I know what it is, right? But to think about, using a subpar fuel for optimal output is insane. Like it's never gonna happen.
Makes no sense.
It's never gonna happen. So I'm excited that's the case. Let's talk about Synergy. Let's talk about the book and then the process of how that came about. This is a project I'm super excited about. I pre-ordered a while ago.
Appreciate it.
I was hoping to have it so that you can sign it, but I'll track you down.
Yeah, I'll get it.
So let's talk about how that came about and then what that means to you, because this is one of those, and I'm guessing series, because I see this continuing. How did it come about and then what that means to you?
So the first Synergy, so the intention of the Synergy series when I started it 7 years ago, well, it's longer because we took COVID off. But anyways, the idea was, how do I bring in these chefs, these friends, and have them cook with our team and help educate and train our team, both in the kitchen and the dining room, and then provide the guests with a really amazing, cool experience, right? So the first year was all New York chefs because I just come from New York. So it was Danielle Boulud, April Bloomfield, Michael White, Michael Anthony. So Gramercy,
heavy hitters.
Maria, right? Massive. And second year, I was like, all right, let's do creative, like sort of hyper creative. So it was Christopher Costow, Sean Brock, Dominique Crenn, Grant Achatz. And the list kept going on. Mm-hmm. Now, people would say to me, how do you get these people? I'm like, I text them. They're friends. Like, these are, I just shoot them a text. And they say yes, or they say no, and it's all good. But the idea of Synergy series has always been rooted in education. Always. And so after our third season, we realized, okay, the people coming to the dinner are usually high net worth individuals because it's an expensive ticket, which I understand, and it has to be. But I'm trying to communicate to our profession. I'm trying to communicate to the young cook, the young server, the young bartender about how Grant Achatz had to battle stage 4 cancer and get through that while his restaurant was deemed the best restaurant in the country and one of the top 10 in the world. How did he do that? And so I really was frustrated because I wasn't getting the profession, the industry to show up. And so we started this thing called The Dialogue, which was like this, a fireside chat, one-on-one conversation. Allison Arth, who owns a company called Salt and Row, which is a leadership firm. She's the moderator. I stay out of it. She's great at that. I'm not. Maybe I am. She's really good. So she has these conversations with these chefs, and we would host them either at Four Seasons, American Swedish Institute, the Glass House, etc. And it's $10. And to be honest with you, we give away probably half the tickets. We call our industry friends and say, hey, we're going to give you 20 tickets. Just show up. And what we realized then after 6 years of doing this with 25 chefs is that not only did we have all the photography of every dinner that we own, we have every menu.
Wow.
They were all willing to donate a recipe to the book, but we had all these stories. We had all this institutional knowledge, all this content. And as you know, more than anybody, content is king.
It's king, yeah.
And so I thought, how do I put all of this into a book so people don't forget about what it is that this restaurant and these group of people who are all either still at Spoon or moved on did this at a time that was really special. So we self-published the book. It took us a little over this past year to do it. It comes out, and our publishing date is May 20th. And so the book will start to ship. The coolest part, in my opinion, is that Bell Bank, who are dear friends and really, really great supporters, they underwrote the whole cost of the book and the production.
Wow.
Which then allows me to sell the book. It's $50 a book, and 100% of the proceeds goes back to Mentor, the nonprofit charity that was created by Danielle and Thomas, myself, and Jerome Bocuse.
I was going to bring it up.
So, we're able to donate the money to them in a way that's really important. But more so than that, like, we're able to capture the knowledge that we have had for the last 6 years.
That, and I also believe that doing a book like this is sort of a roadmap, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It's a one-stop shop. You can go to and get a book like this and have all of the knowledge of these phenomenal mentors, and gain it all in one place. And that to me is, it's priceless. To be able to do that. And you have a snapshot of time. Like these dinners happen. You get into the reasons why, and of course you have the recipes and the images and all these things. But it's more so about the mindset of the individual of how these things came to be. And I think, to me, the stories are more impactful than anything else.
Totally.
And that to me is mind blowing. And how you have, it's the all-star team basically.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at the monstars, if you will, of the industry, and all of the same mindset, and then for a great cause. That's the other thing. And kudos to that. I can't wait to it. I can't wait to have it physically in my hands, and it's beautifully laid out, and the story is more so. That's from what I saw of the book is it's really rooted, and the stories are the glue.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a storybook, and I mean, it's so funny. Like, there are little things that are stories within the stories, as you can imagine, right? So, like, when Thomas came and did his oysters and pearls, it was the first time ever they've done that dish out of French Laundry.
See,
they've never done it out of TFL. That was that was number one.
Wow.
And my oldest son, who has been fortunate enough to eat at TFL and had the oysters and pearls at the French Laundry and loved them, came down after school and made sure, because he was like, Dad, do you think I can have that dish tonight? And I was like, yeah, sure. He was like 13 at the time. I think he was 12.
That's a great.
So, there's a line out the door of people wanting to come into the restaurant for TK's dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And in the corner of the restaurant is TK sitting having a conversation with my oldest son, Emil, as he's just crushing oysters and pearls.
That's great.
So there's all these like stories in the stories, and it's all in the book. It's really cool.
That's so cool. I would have to say that this is one of those labor of love types of things. So it's great that you had at least foresight. Like, we have all of this documentation of an imagery, and let's just do something with it. And that's sort of like this. That's for the culture, by the culture. So very cool. I believe that going into the next stage of what it is that you're gonna do, like how are you tying into everyday experience for not only the patrons, but the all of the talented individuals that work with you and for you? How is managing and cultivating that talent? How has that been? Because that has to be exciting to, like you said, see guys come into their own and have a. I get that's the hardest thing I believe for any creative, specifically a chef. You go through these stages of first mimicking and following, and then there's this creation, and then you get a voice, right? And then once that voice is developed, what am I saying with this voice? And very few, I would say, very few master what it is that they're saying and how they're saying it, and then it being a straight, continuous through line. What is the exploration of seeing that happen in real time? What does that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, finding the voice, no doubt, is the hardest. Retaining it is done through stubbornness, I think, a lot of the way. Meaning you're focused and you know that this is your way to go, and so you want to stay on that course. Watching the chefs and the leadership team around us excel, and frankly, be in a position where they've been with me for quite some time now. And the retention has been wonderful to see. Now it's time for us to grow, and to spread our wings a little bit. And we've been very intentional about withholding that growth the last couple of years, mainly because I didn't think we were ready for what that meant at the time. Now we've just announced we're going to open up down in Naples, Florida at the Four Seasons.
You beat me to it.
So like that's a part of growth. What is that going to look like? What is that going to feel like? How do we spread our wings beyond our state border and still, enact that Soigné focus that's down there in Florida and on the coast. So that's going to be fun. We have an announcement of Belcourt, which we're taking the Belcourt brand out of all of the Cooks of Crocus Hills locations, which currently there's St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Edina. The Edina store, we're taking over the lease, and we're going to remake that into a Belcourt bakery and cafe. In the North Loop store, we're actually moving out of that. We've signed a lease on a new space around the corner from Spoon and Stable, and we're going to build a Belcourt bakery and cafe during the day, French bistro at night. Again, there's growth. What does that look like? How do we bring that brand back into a way that we see it in today's world of 2025? We closed the one in Wayzata during COVID. And we've lived within the Cooks brand the last 5 years, which has been great. Now we're ready to move on. So, that type of growth, there's going to be a lot of testing. So I think part of my responsibility is making sure to remind everybody to take the time that they need to be ready for what's coming. I can handle it.
Right.
I see the marathon. I see the race. I see it. I see how long it's going to take. I know how hard it's going to be. But when people haven't been through this before, I went through this with Danielle for a long time. But when people haven't been through this before, they think, oh, if I just get around this is the most damaging thing I think I hear people say, especially my chefs. Sometimes they'll say, if once this event gets over, then I'm good. And then I can do this. And I would say, once that event's over, there's another one right after
behind
that. It. And then after that. So what you can't do is you can't think that short.
Right.
You got to think out. What is your 5 months? What is 6 months? What does a year look like? And then start to plan it and realize that you're going to hit all of these speed bumps along the way. And it's all good. But now, how are you going to go through them? How are you going to navigate around them? Because it's never going to be, once I open the restaurant, then I'm going to be in a good position. Right. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Once you open the restaurant, you got to run the restaurant.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then all the idiosyncrasies and then the X factors that come into play.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's insane. Take me through how, for me, I just know, I believe anytime you're doing specifically mundane things, whether that's, I don't know, writing a menu or just anything that you have on autopilot as far as mentally goes, what is the soundtrack in your head that is playing? For me, music is such an important, integral part of how and why I do things. So how I used to memorize recipes that I knew I had to have down, I used to make songs out of them in my head. And so that's just, for me, the building structure of a recipe is the same as writing a song.
Yeah.
It's the structural integrity things. You can move them around,
sure,
but all the usual suspects are at play.
Yep.
So
this probably won't come as a surprise to you. But I'll listen to I'll listen to a lot of orchestra music.
Yep.
I love instruments. I love what they put off. I think it's very similar to ingredients. I think it's very similar to, there's 4 people playing the violin. There's 1 through 4 in grading.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that anyone is worse or better than the other, but there is a sliver of better somewhere.
Yep.
I was lucky enough when my wife and I were very young. So we were probably 21. So this is 24 years ago. We went to Vienna, Austria to watch the famous New Year's Eve symphony orchestra ball. Okay. It was like it's in the space is insane. Everything's gold. Like it's unbelievable. Wow. So whatever. So we're there. I don't know how we got tickets, but we're there. And we watched the first act. They go to intermission and this guy walks up to us. We must have just looked like we were so out of place. But this gentleman walks up to us and says, where are you two sitting? And I said, oh, we're there and there. And he says, after intermission, come find me. I'm going to be at section X. And I said, okay, great. So we go through intermission. I said to my wife, I'm like, I wonder, are we in trouble? Like, is something,
what did
we do? Did we not clap? Did we clap too hard? Like, what happened? So he says, I want you to see the orchestra from a different angle on the second half. I said, okay. We sat on stage.
Wow.
So the violinist was sitting here.
Wow.
The conductor's in front of me. I will never, to this day, I've told this story before to friends. I get chills. I will never forget his face.
Yeah.
The energy, the focus, the level of focus and energy that he had was unlike anything I had ever seen outside of a kitchen. It blew me away.
I just posted a couple days ago a post where I have a conductor, an orchestra conductor, and a chef at the pass. Mm-hmm. It's the same laser. It's such, and it's one of those things that if they're so synonymous, but if you don't know the world,
right,
you don't understand.
Right.
It. And for sure, a kitchen runs like a perfectly constructed orchestra.
Yeah.
When it's optimal.
When it's if you're the chef and you're standing there and you're picking up certain dishes, you understand where the pans are going to come from, where they're going to go, what's going to go in them, how high the fire should be, how low that fire should be. Yeah. Why are they now they're whisking, like you see it all. Yeah.
The timing,
the same way.
Same exact way.
It's like he or she knows.
Right.
This is how the instruments are going to roll out.
Absolutely. And the strengths, the weaknesses, totally. If there is any.
Yeah, of course.
All of those different things. Yeah. And that correlation, I believe, is magical.
Yeah.
Because most people will never get it.
Right. Well, it's control and chaos.
Yes.
Right. Yes, and that's the thing. I mean, in both of that sets of environment, you have this control and you have this chaos in which you're just like, you're after it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible.
It is very incredible. What would you say to date? First off, all of these things we're talking about that are happening soon. Congratulations and happy early birthday.
Thank you.
You being a tourist like my wife. I have a few in my life.
Yeah. Sorry.
We're
bulls, man.
This is a fact. This is a fact. However, I'm a Scorpio, and I am.
You can handle it.
Yes. I'm built to last.
Okay.
So let's talk about what your proudest moment to date is, as far as coming into and your impact on the community here. Because I think you made a conscious effort to come back. You could have gone anywhere, let's be honest. And it would play, right? You made a concerted effort to not only to come here and to make good on, I'm probably say the promises you made to yourself, and do it in a way that is very much celebrating all that is the Twin Cities, but in a way that is very approachable, yet awe-inspiring. I don't know if that makes sense to most. To date, what is your proudest moment of that?
Man, that's a big question, because that means I have to pat myself on the back a little bit.
You have to a little bit.
I would say certainly having Spoon hit its 10-year anniversary.
That's major.
Is an incredibly proud moment for myself, personally, professionally. Seeing the people who've come through our restaurant, seeing the restaurants that we've built from that one restaurant. Somebody said to me early on when I opened Spoon, I don't remember who was interviewing me, but a reporter was interviewing me, and they said, did you expect, this is like maybe 8 months after we opened Spoon. They said, did you ever expect Spoon and Sable to be this successful out of the gates? And I said, yep. And she was like, excuse me? And I said, listen, LeBron James doesn't take the ball with 2 seconds left to shoot the 3-pointer to win the game and not think it's going to go in. Not one part of him. I'm not saying I'm LeBron James, but what I am saying is like that was always my mentality. My focus was always that I wanted it to be the best. I mean, I remember telling my team early on, I want this restaurant to be that when you travel outside of Minnesota and you say, where are you from? And somebody says, I live in Minnesota. So, oh my God, have you heard of this restaurant, Spoon and Stable? That's what I want to have happen. That's not for me, right? I want that because I want people to start to talk about our city more as a culinary town.
Right.
And I genuinely believe we are not in competition with each other. Everything that's happening in Northeast is not a competition to North Loop. It is a perfect relationship. And if it allows more people and more tourists and more people from the suburbs to come down here to see what it is we are all doing, the better.
Yeah.
You know, so when Spoon hit its 10-year mark, I was like, whew,
that's major.
That's good.
Especially for a restaurant. You know, it's hard.
It's
a
very,
major
very
thing.
hard.
You touched on it a little bit, but I would love to hear your input on this. Minneapolis, in my opinion, as a person who's traveled the world, is a bona fide food city. Yet, not on the radar. And for whatever reason, if you're talking to some people outside of here, it's hard to pinpoint what Minneapolis is known, what the Twin Cities is known for. Why I have my own opinions, but why do you think that is the case? Why is, because I believe, and this is a fact, you can get pretty much the best of any cuisine. I've had it here in unsuspecting places. And why do you think that knowledge doesn't escape?
So I think it's on the radar, but it's definitely not near the center. And I believe a lot of it has to do with the fact that there needs to be more than 1 or 2 or 3 people advocating for what it is we are doing. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of courage to go out there and promote yourself, your town, your colleagues. And when you do that, you know, you have to be understanding that you're doing it for a reason that's not just for you. It's for a bigger part of it. The truth is, what is the purpose of coming to Minneapolis and St. Paul beyond arts and music and food and certain, you know, outdoor activities? There's all of these things. Are those the same people that are the diners that are going, you know, you go to Napa Valley, you're going there for a specific reason, right? You're going to New York City, you might be going for theater, but hey, I need to get pre-theater dinner. There's a bunch of great restaurants you go. How else can we generate that energy here? Right. I've always felt that we should push to get Michelin in the Twin Cities. This is not for me, right? This is not for my ego. I don't need it.
Right.
I've been grateful to have run and established a 1-star Michelin restaurant in New York City. This is for a purpose that there's Bib Gourmand, right? Think about this. You remember the Zagat Guide. There is no Zagat Guide.
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay. As a result, you know, I'm going to ask, where do you eat in Houston? I don't know. I got to Google it. Right? Where do I go in Austin? I can name 1 or 2 restaurants. Now, you and I can name a lot more, but I'm talking, if you're just talking to somebody off the street, it's different. Before you say, I just look at the Zagat Guide and I can get my spot. That's why I think Michelin should come here, because we want to push to get the Bib Gourmand. Of course, there's going to be a 1-star. Hopefully there is a 2-star. Right. Hopefully someday we push for 3-star. You know, this idea that Michelin changes the way a restaurant cooks or serves or charges people is simply untrue. Right? Because we all have to have a profit. And if we change our model because of this one thing and we see no profit, we're going to change it back. Right? Demi is a Relais and Chateau property. It's the only Relais Chateau property in our state. It's the only here in Canoe Bay in Wisconsin are the only 2 in the 5-state region. We're the only independent restaurant here. We were the only independent restaurant in the world, besides one other one, to get inducted the year we got inducted in the world.
Wow.
Okay. We didn't change the price at Demi. We didn't go up. We actually went down. I said, hey, let's get more people in, right? Maybe it's too expensive. Just take $5 off, take $10 off. Let's shift this, change it. The purpose of what I think the Twin Cities needs to focus on in terms of food and beverage and yelling from the mountaintops that it is an incredible food city. It's just to keep promoting it.
Right.
Keep going out there and doing things like what you're doing, getting this news out there to people that it is a great food town. At some point, we need to stop telling the story, and somebody needs to tell it for us.
Yeah. So that's the key. So that's my. So I believe that creatives they're just horrible self promoters. Like nobody that's in the weeds doing the work
Yeah.
has time to say, hey, look at me.
Yeah.
You know, it's and these stories have to be told in a manner in which that are approachable.
Yeah.
So I believe that was the downside for Aquavit when it came. Like when I remember when we had our industry night and we flew in all of the seafood and shellfish from back east, and we threw about 95% of it in the garbage.
Oh my God.
Because the research wasn't done at that point in time, this was a buffet meat and potato town.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
And but we had that, okay, we're bringing New York to Minneapolis mentality, which was the wrong mindset.
Yeah.
Like so I think that the knowledge of knowing that that's not the approach that needs to be taken. It's more so about exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And look, we can hold our own with just about anything, any place you can go. And it's a cool place to be. That's the other thing.
Exactly.
And in like most things, Prince included, Prince had to go to LA to become Prince.
Yep.
And then, okay, now that's one of our own.
Yep.
So that the cosign was that, okay, you went to somewhere no different than you.
Yeah.
And then kind of cut your teeth in New York, but okay, now I'm back to uplift what we do here in a manner that is very complementary to the region.
Yeah, now we're starting to get these pockets.
Yeah.
Right? Northeast.
Yeah,
North
this
Loop.
is insane.
You just look at all these little like neighborhood pockets that are starting to open up restaurants. Multiple. Right. Because to us, the restaurant across the street isn't the competition. It's gravity. We're pulling and pushing from each other. We're both getting that business. And it helps the neighborhood tremendously. Right. And those types, you see suburban pockets, right? Which is great for people that live out there, but it's similar to like New York. Like if you live in the Lower East Side, you're never going to go eat on the Upper East Side.
No.
Bronx, forget about it. Right?
I'm staying right on Arthur Avenue.
Yeah, there's no way, So if you live on the Upper East, you're not going down to the Lower East Side unless there's a gala.
Yeah.
Right? And then, okay, fine, I'll eat somewhere. But it's no different here. It's like there's all these little pockets. You're starting to see these neighborhoods get developed. We're still in this phase where, we know who we are. We know what we're able to create. Everybody's kind of catching up to it a little bit now, which is awesome to see. It's just a matter where, you just got to keep going after it. Yeah. The peak will come. And listen, when it peaks, then it falls away for a little bit because they got to go somewhere else and pay attention to something else. That doesn't mean slow down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, before I let you go, we have to do a little thing I call the lightning round, which is a word association, fast pace. I'm going to give you a word and or phrase, and you just spit out the first thing that comes to mind. So no pressure. Yeah. No pressure. All right. First concert you ever went to?
Billy Joel.
So, okay. Billy Joel was the first concert at Shea Stadium to open it up in the last.
Wow, really?
In the last.
Wow.
So he did
cool.
and I went to the last one.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
Yeah, he opened up Shea, and then before they tore it down, he was the last.
That's incredible.
Yeah, Billy Joel was one of my.
Yeah, he was amazing.
I love Billy Joel.
Yeah, my mom was a huge fan, and so my mom and I went. She's like, "You want to come?" Like, yeah, sure.
I love Billy Joel. He's so quintessentially New York too.
I know.
That's my guy.
I know.
All right, secret guilty pleasure snack.
Cheetos.
Which one, puffy or crunchy?
No, I'll do both, but I prefer crunchy.
Okay.
But I can't eat them anymore.
Like to tear the top of your roof.
Yeah, but I can't. You start eating one, and they're so good, man. And you just
have you had the jalapeno ones?
I have.
Oh,
I know.
It's got a little bit of crack in it. All right. Okay. Last great meal you didn't cook. This should be an easy one because you just told me you just came from.
Yeah, I just came from New York. I was just there. So I had a great meal at La Tête d'Or, which was Danielle's new steakhouse. It was delicious. It was really delicious.
What'd you have?
Well, we had a lot. We had prime rib. He sent out a Cote de Boeuf. We had a couple salad, couple crudos. The sundae, though, the vanilla chocolate swirl sundae. Listen, he had like the 7 accoutrements, sprinkles, brownies, marshmallows, but like everything's made by
It's
hand.
insane.
That was so good.
He made sprinkles. Dude.
Yeah, it was so
That's-
good.
I'm jealous.
No.
Dream collab with an artist or musician that you would love to cook with, not for, with.
I would like to cook with John Legend
Okay.
because, he anybody that can play the piano like that and sing like that, I just think it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
I got a cool John Legend story. So when I was in the Bay Area, I was the executive chef of Willie Mae's Skybox Lounge. And
Yeah.
he did a whole radio thing when he was putting out his first album. And he came in and the kitchen wasn't even open. They were doing this whole radio thing on stage because the place used to be an old jazz club called Kimball's East. And I was like, hey, I got to meet him. Like, you know, are you hungry? Like, yeah. You're like, I said, what would you like? He's like, I really just want some eggs. Now we know that every single person walking on this planet is a bona fide egg expert.
Of course.
How they like
Yeah,
them,
of course.
right? So it's one of the hardest things to cook for somebody because everybody has a way that they like it.
Mhm.
So like, okay, dude, how do you like your eggs? You want them scrambled, but you want them soft scrambled. Like, okay. Which makes sense because like 5 years later, him and his wife they were doing the cooking show, and he did this whole thing about slow cooked
Wow,
custardy
crazy.
eggs
Yeah.
with tons of butter in it.
And you're like, I taught him that.
Yeah. I was like, I made him eggs just like that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. A little bit of flour to sell. One kitchen rule that should never be broken.
Messy station, messy mind.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep it clean.
Absolutely. Well, dude, Gavin, this has been amazing. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being the ambassador to the industry and to the cities that you are. It's amazing to be able to talk to, a person of your caliber and the industry, and it's a lot how I like to say how no reservations. Well, the reason why that worked to me is that Tony spoke to cooks about the back of the house stuff in a manner that we all related to.
Yeah.
And then you basically you got a view into the kitchen from a cook's perspective.
Yeah.
And you do that in a seamless way.
Thank you.
And it's an amazing thing to watch.
I
honestly.
appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Again, tell all of the viewers and people that are watching, how can they follow what you have going on? And it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, easiest way is at Gavin Kaysen.
Yep.
Is Instagram. So we throw a bunch of stuff up there. There's gavinkaysen.com, which then leads to our website, staysoigné.com, which has everything on the restaurant.
Everything's on Soigné. So if you have not, this is what I'm saying. If you have not, you need to go to, if you're in town, local or not, Spoon and Stable. Start there. There's probably we got to figure what's the natural progression. How should they do this? It's sort of like watching Star Wars movies. How should they?
I think you come to Spoon first.
Yep.
Right. Like that's the OG. You come there, and then when you're ready, come to Spoon. Then do Demi. Listen, Mara for dinner is amazing. Mara for brunch is also amazing. Come see us over there and just start the progression slowly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How really quick? How many spoons have you stolen from restaurants? Like, would you say?
I'm north of 1,000.
I'm a sauce cup guy.
Is how many spoons have people stolen from
For
me?
sure.
That's north of 5,000.
Yeah. You have the number on that. I'm a sauce cup guy. I don't know what it is. It's something like I gotta take that. It's shiny.
I know.
Okay, thank you again. This has been the Taste Music Hear Food Podcast Show. I am Ed Porter. Till next time, take care.
MBC. No relation to NBC.